taking a critical look at the gaming news of the week.
This is Augmented Reality,
Presented by the Triple S League.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Augmented Reality Podcast for August 15th, 2020, the Saturday edition of the show. It's going to be a big one today. Thanks for joining us. My name is Ash. I'm here as always with Cyberpunk, and of course we have the immutable Moontag with us again as well.
Hello.
Newest team member. For those of you who... I've found that when I don't introduce you properly, people get confused about who you are. So, yes, Moontag is with us. She's... She works with us here at the Triple S League, and we have tons of Cyberpunk info to go through today, a couple of other big stories as well, so stick with us through it. Hello to everybody who's active in the live chat. Great to see you all. Tell your friends, it's time for the Augmented Reality Podcast. All right. Yes, if you are listening live today, please do say hello in the live chat. Send us your questions and comments there as well. We'll read and respond to as many as we can throughout the podcast. Super Chat's a good option if you want to basically guarantee that your message gets read, as long as it conforms to basic standards of human decency. Nothing that'll get us, thrown in jail or banned off YouTube. And don't forget to slam that like button. It likes it rough. And it tells YouTube that you appreciate this content. Sorry, I was distracted by the chat here. Ali Mufu says, I almost forgot about the podcast because of pizza. Well, I mean... I can see where pizza would be an adequate distraction, but it's not an either-or situation. Feel free to enjoy your pizza while listening to the podcast. Man, now I want pizza. All right, so tons of Cyberpunk info today. So we had Night City Wire number 2, episode 2, earlier this week, and a ton of info came out during that event, and then right after that event, a bunch more info came out. There were follow-up interviews and then Q&As that were totally not Q&As, and just a whole bunch of stuff we're going to go through. So we're going to start with a couple of other stories just because there was a couple of big stories, and we want to do the Cyberpunk stuff all as one big chunk. So this first 10 minutes here or so, we're going to talk about a couple of other things, and then we'll dive right into the Cyberpunk stuff for the rest of the show. But the other big stories this week were the delay of Halo Infinite to 2021. Don't have an exact date yet. And also, now Epic Games is making moves against a couple of the big boys in the industry, Apple and Google, and doing that in a very interesting way. So let's start with Halo Infinite, though, just because we wanted to... We talked about that quite in depth on prior podcasts, and when Halo Infinite was revealed at the Xbox event recently, the response was mixed. I mean, it looks like it's going to be a good game, but there was a lot of negative response to just the visuals and how it was portrayed, and I think there was I'm not going to rehash it all because we went really in depth into this on a previous podcast. But they made some interesting decisions in showcasing this game that I think didn't showcase the best side of the game, mm-hmm. And they didn't focus on some of the more impressive next gen stuff, like how this how the big open world is going to be working, and then just even in that they chose, the time of day that they did, like in-game time of day, that just didn't showcase, like, just had very poor lighting. And
I don't understand this. I don't understand this. The time of day doesn't matter in a Halo.
Well, it's
not a circular sphere.
No, I get that, but I mean,
you
just
don't
time
have
of
a
day
horizon.
In terms of the
you just have the sun beaming down on the Halo at all times.
Yes, okay. But I mean, the angle of the sun in the sky resulted in a ton of shadowy areas, and it was just not a good showcase of what things actually looked like. We showed you some stills from and the explanation from Digital Foundry about just why the lighting wasn't very good. And anyway, bottom line, Halo Infinite's been delayed, and they have they've quoted COVID, that thing that I can't mention. You know, the pandemic. I don't even know if I can say that without getting tagged as tagged by YouTube, because they want to they don't want you to they don't want you to hear any misinformation on the topic. Only the misinformation that they want you to hear is what you're allowed to hear. So there you go. And yes, I did not misspeak there. So anyway, bottom line, there's just issues with the lockdowns that they basically said that their decision to shift the release is a result of multiple factors that have contributed to development challenges, including the ongoing situation that is impacting all of us this year. Now, it seems though that the timing of this makes it seem like perhaps the response to the visual aspects of the game impacted that decision, though. I mean, what do you think? Do you think if they'd gotten a more positive reception at the Xbox event, that it
wouldn't have been delayed? Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And again, this boils down to just they have some weird tech when it comes to lighting, and they didn't show off the new tech that they have for how the world essentially exists and how it's constantly evolving, and how everything is happening all at the same time, and you'll never have two playthroughs that are even remotely the same because of all of the different unique things that can happen every single day. And it's just a super huge environment of uniqueness, and it's just really cool in how this has more or less come about. And it's shocking that they basically went, hey, yeah, you know what's cool is basically just running with this stuff that a few years ago they had basically run, right? Like a few years ago, their last time, it was all about the graphics. Well, now they tried to show off the graphics when the graphics is not the strong suit of the game. And how anybody who thought that was a good idea still has a job there, I'm really confused.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, okay, no, your strong suit is not the graphics. Why would you even try? I don't understand this. Like, what kind of deficiency do you have in the level of your brains? Because this isn't your strong suit. Your strong suit, you have an amazing strong suit. It's like a world. This is the equivalent of a world weightlifting champion coming out to do an endurance marathon, like distance running marathon. It's like, that's not your strong suit. Why would you even try that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is wrong with you? Why would you do that? And it's really it makes me scratch my head and go, and is everybody there knowing what they're doing? Do they understand what's going on? Or are they just literally going, hey guys,
Yeah.
nonsense talk. I'm just going to give up speaking English words. Blah, 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 blah. It's like... It's dumb. It's so dumb, and I'm so confused by it too.
What puzzles me though is why, because they announced that they were going to bring a ray tracing patch after the game's release, and now with the game delay, it's likely that that'll be part of the full game release.
Yeah, that'll be the release for sure.
But why they would not develop that, just develop that in tandem for the next gen system? I mean, even if you have to use the old school lighting the old lighting techniques on the Xbox One, previous systems, if you have the capabilities of this is supposed to be a flagship game for your new console, why are you not pushing it to its limits? That's what
Right.
doesn't make sense to me. And they have the capability to do ray trace lighting for this, even just for the global illumination, would have made a humongous difference. Plus, again, they should have showcased more of the open world stuff and how that all works. I would have taken a page out of CD Projekt Red's book and done kind of a bit of a walkthrough through one of the missions and say, here, this is how it impacts the world. Here's what's going to happen if you do this. Here's what's going to happen if you do this. Show us that stuff, right? But instead, it was a very subpar showing. Now, the boss of Xbox, Phil Spencer, did come out and speak further about this and said that the decision to delay was an alternative to one of their other considerations, which was to split the game up into parts and ship it separately. I don't know, I guess kind of like what the Hitman franchise is doing these days, or something like that. Now, I don't know how that would have helped the graphics situation, but anyway, they apparently did consider that as an option before ultimately pushing the release back to 2021. Now, that's a big decision, because again, Halo is now going to miss the console release. That's no small deal.
Yeah, no, it kind of pooches them, and again, this boils down to where were you when you were supposed to be making these decisions a long time ago? Like, where was your, I really don't understand. Where was your game planning 8 months ago? Or even 12? Like, ray tracing's not been, this is not a new thing. I'm sure they've had to deal with it on a number of directions now, and it's just kind of weird that they're just doing this now.
So Time Bean asks, will the delay...
bizarre.
Sorry?
Nothing.
Oh, okay. Time Bean's asking, will the delay allow them to fix those lighting problems? I mean, yes.
Yes, probably.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, it's now going to be their number one priority.
Because if you're bringing in, you're talking about basically a different lighting system. It's just a different technique for lighting that you can apply to this. So they don't have to change the game world significantly, but it's just how is it lit. It's like if you're on a PC game, you switch the RTX on to the RTX off. It's using the same world, same models, same stuff is going on. It's just the lighting is being processed very differently, and it looks significantly different. All right, so that's that. Halo Infinite missing the release of the Xbox, which is do you think that's going to hurt their bottom line? Cyb?
No.
No.
I mean, not in the long run. I mean, it's going to come down to games, and it's going to come down to power, and it's going to come down to a lot of things. And PlayStation might have the early start, but all of the terrible decisions that they have been making for the past couple of months, that's all going to catch up to them eventually.
Right. That
is all going to show up and basically is going to ruin their day. They're going to think that what they're doing and what they've done thus far is what's given them the lead and the heads up and the winning strategy right now. Mm-hmm. And it's nope. You have absolutely no clue. This is 100% the wrong direction to go, period. Mm-hmm. And it's incredibly stupid for them to continue down this road, and having kind of the lead out of the gate. They're going to win that sprint, right out of the gate. I've got a lot of athletic metaphors today. They're going to sprint out of the gate, and they're going to be like, I've got such a lead. And then they're going to stop, and they're going to turn around, and they're going to look at the lead that they have. And then they're going to realize that they've got absolutely nothing left in the tank.
They just ran out of gas.
Once they start going. They've just completely ran out of gas. And again, this boils down to the fact, this is not, I'm not wishing this on them, but it just comes from looking and watching and seeing what they've been doing, and what they've been doing essentially has been like, hey, let's just do all these horrible ideas, such as, just treating our previous Japanese developers like garbage, treating our Japanese fans like garbage, and it's eventually going to turn around and bite them in the butt.
Right.
Big time. Big time.
I agree. And I don't see this pushing people from Xbox to PlayStation. Might push people from, well, I mean, it might.
Xbox is already as low as they could basically get.
Yeah.
I don't know very many Xbox fans who are like, oh, Halo was a mess, therefore I'm not going to buy the Xbox. No, they're buying the Xbox because they want to run, Cyberpunk 2077 on the strongest hardware.
Right.
That's what most people are considering right now.
So it might delay some sales, but in the long run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, in the long run, they're going to have, especially if they come out with a bunch of these next gen games, we're really going to see this movement towards this, and it's going to, like I said, it's going to be fine for them in the long run, not necessarily like in the short term. So.
All right, and the other big story, but for those of you wondering, no, we haven't discussed Cyberpunk yet. We're going to jump into that right away here. We just have one other quick story to discuss because it's kind of a big story, so we need to give some time to it. And then we will be talking nothing but Cyberpunk for the rest of the show today. But so Apple, this is huge. Apple kicked Fortnite off of their App Store. So did Google, but it's not. I mean, Apple's the one that's getting all of the attention here because that's a big deal. On Google, like on Android, you can still download the app directly from Epic. Apple's a lot more locked down. If if you're not getting the app through their app store, you're just not getting it unless you totally jailbreak your device, which of course avoids warranty and all kinds of things. But basically, here's the breakdown. Epic Games, the makers of Fortnite, they implemented an in-app payment system within Fortnite on mobile, and this coincided with a permanent discount to basically everything in the game, like buying V-Bucks plus the V-Bucks cost of buying things in the game. So they just applied this discount across the board. I believe it was a 30% discount. So that's on PC, every platform. Now on mobile, what they did is this coincided with them implementing their own in-app payment system in the mobile app, and that bypasses basically the platform app store. So Apple and Google no longer get their cut of the in-app purchases, which is 30%. Now, this violates the terms of service of having your app on those stores. So, of course, Fortnite got kicked off of both of those stores. And in the wake of that, Epic, I should say, turned around and launched a lawsuit against both Apple and Google, and an ad campaign that they had clearly prepared in advance. So they're going to war against the big boys of the mobile industry. Is basically what's happening. And this is going to be really interesting because the way these lawsuits go could change the landscape of mobile gaming. Like, it could change how things happen going forward. Like, this could set some serious precedent. Obviously, Apple and Google, they want that cut of all the in-app purchases. And Epic is saying, no, this isn't fair. These platforms are monopolies. They are...
Which is so rich coming from Epic.
It is. And, I have my issues. I have my issues with Epic Games for sure. But I'm kind of impressed at the cojones they have here. So I'm kind of like in sit back and grab the popcorn and watch how this all goes down mode. Because despite all the issues I have with Epic, I have huge concerns about these literal megacorps. Apple, Google, Amazon, these literal mega corporations that have more, that are worth more than the GPU of many countries of the world. Like, it's ridiculous how huge these corporations have gotten. And so I'm kind of I'm kind of in the camp of anybody who wants to stand up against this and be like, no, this is ridiculous and we're going to actually take a stand. So, you know what? I kind of have to give some kudos to Epic here. Much as I have despised some of their business practices in the past with regard to, exclusives and things like that. Anyway, what do you guys think?
Yeah. No, I mean this is the big fights that are starting to come. Again, I'm kind of okay with this whole thing with Apple and Epic going at it, because it kind of, for the most part, helps the situation, I think. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like, yeah, no, just looking at it overall, it's good that Epic's doing this fight, because I don't think most other people would win. And as much as I'm annoyed with Epic, most of the stuff is like they're not as authoritarian as they could be, and they're not as authoritarian as a bunch of these other companies are. They don't prevent or restrict the amount or what type of games that you can play or create on their engines. And that's like, kudos, that's good, because other companies are not so kind. Most other companies are kind of like, all over the place as far as that goes, and this is for the, it's one of the first times where it's like, actually this is kind of not too bad. So
yeah.
At least this doesn't seem to be like a reactionary kind of move, and I feel like I'm literally watching out the stuff of science fiction play out. So it's definitely a grab some popcorn and see how this plays out.
Which megacorp will come on top? Lots of opinions in the chat right now. Did I say GDP? I said GPU of many countries. Yeah, I meant the GDP. My apologies there. Yes, Epic is also huge. I don't know if I'd call them a megacorp. They're a big corporation for sure, but they're not on the same scale as what Google, Apple, what these companies have. So yes, they're a big corporation, and I guess it's kind of a case of, well, they are, they're kind of doing something that I like in the moment. So it's not like I'm saying, oh, Epic is great now, but I like this one thing that they're doing. Let's put it that way. Like, Google is literally in a position to sway public opinion on anything they want. Like, it's become so powerful. They control so much information and access to information. Like, I was thinking yesterday, what's the top search terms on Google? Well, you've got a variety of stuff. What's the top search term on Microsoft, Bing, Google? Like really, I don't know. Am I the only one who's like gets annoyed when I try to search something in my browser and it opens Bing? That's like, no, I don't want your stupid half-assed search results. I want, they've got the best search engine, and I mean, part of the consequence of that is that they have a lot of control. They have a lot of control, and if they want to, they could really sway public opinion. Plus, they control YouTube. They control massive amounts of internet advertising. They have so much money that they can afford to invest in massive projects, millions of dollars into projects that ultimately fail, and they barely feel it. Like YouTube loses money. Like YouTube's a liability.
YouTube loses money because mostly because they undersell the advertisements. If I want to get my commercial in front of 1 million people, an unskippable commercial in front of 1 million people on YouTube, that costs me a couple $1,000s tops. If I wanted to do that on cable, well, that's like several $1 million.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like that's like $4 to $5 a person versus like YouTube that can do that for pennies. Now, why do they do this? It's because if suddenly they said, okay, advertising is now like 100% more expensive on our system. Suddenly this would make a whole lot of other video sharing platforms really attractive to advertisers because they're going to be able to put those prices out and maintain good a good source of income, and that's going to make things really work quite well. You don't have this right now. You have this. It's so expensive to do video hosting because the feedback on it is so terrible that you've either got to be doing it for prawn or for a bunch of the people who sail around in large wooden boats in the Caribbean with giant black flags. That's basically the only thing that's profitable, other than, I mean, because YouTube isn't even profitable. So they're doing this to keep the price down. It's like, and it's such a I mean, it's really bad. Like this is not an okay thing to do. This is absolutely reprehensible. Because basically this is like showing up saying, "Hey guys, 50-cent hamburgers in the city." And wow, everybody's like, "Wow, 50-cent hamburgers!" And everybody else can't even make a hamburger, for anything less than $3. And so basically, you starve out all of your competition, and now you're the only show in town. And now suddenly, they can do whatever they want with the prices and control whatever else that they want to. So, I mean, it's far more complex than that. There's a whole thing about data collection, search engine algorithm optimization, especially with the whole concept floating around about the search engine you mentioned earlier. The reason why their search engine is as good as they are is because YouTube is as big as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Without it being that big, you wouldn't have the search engine that would be that capable, because you don't have millions upon millions, hundreds of millions of people, hundreds and hundreds of millions of people on your thing every day, putting in information and sorting out the algorithm and finding what they want and all that kind of stuff. You just don't have that.
Right.
And so this is why these big corporations are so dangerous, is because they're doing stuff that doesn't help anything. However, I got to point this out too. It's because of this that blockchain technology has gotten as far as it has, because it's the only way to compete on their level is by utilizing the all of the hidden assets that everything else has. And they are essentially laying the foundation of their own destruction, because eventually they're going to hit a wall, because they built their system on this other older system, and these newer, like, more streamlined systems are coming in and will eventually replace them.
Right.
And this is why it's not good to become a monopolistic authoritarian, because eventually your system will collapse. There has been no point in history where that is not true.
That is true. Like, size is negatively correlated with maneuverability and flexibility. So yeah, it becomes a problem.
It's so foolish. It's so foolish for these companies to be like, yes, we have exactly what it takes to take over, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, you don't.
Yeah. In any case, before we go too far down that rabbit hole, that's just basically kind of explaining why I'm kind of like, yeah, Team Epic on this one, on this particular issue. I go issue by issue with pretty much everything, personally. So, anyway, it's going to be interesting to see how this falls out, because this could definitely have some legal ramifications for all of mobile gaming in the future, if they get anywhere with it. Anyway, it's Cyberpunk time. Night City Wire number 2 was a really fun time. The pre-show we did on our channel. I got a lot of compliments on that, and I really appreciate that. I get fairly stressed out doing live streams by myself, but then I think we found a format that really worked. You guys really seemed to enjoy it, so really appreciate the feedback on that one. Absolutely. And it was a lot of fun to watch. So they covered basically 3 things in Night City Wire. They covered weapons, they covered the life paths, and then they did a featurette on Refused becoming Johnny Silverhand's band. So the real world band Refused becoming Johnny Silverhand's band in the game, the Samurai. And the lead singer of Refused having to sing as Johnny Silverhand. So we're going to be hearing a lot of Johnny Silverhand singing. Obviously, there's going to be it should be really interesting, and I think this is one of the best things about a video game is when they create a world with rich history, like where you feel like you're in a world that has a lot of history, where a lot has already taken place. There's systems built upon other old systems. Like, just adds this richness to a world. Really love that about games. It's one of the things I think people love about Elder Scrolls. I think that's one of the things people love about Halo, The Witcher, all of these open world RPGs that have, worlds with a lot of history behind them. So I think we're going to get that in Cyberpunk 2077. And one of the ways we're going to get that is the music. There's going to be a lot of music in this game. There's going to be a lot of radio stations, and I mean, when one of your main classes in the game is called a rocker boy, like not in 2077 specifically, but that's one of the roles from the tabletop games is rocker boy. Basically, these protest musicians or these punk musicians that write protest music, protest against the corpse, all of this stuff. Very cool. There's going to be a lot of that. So that was kind of a cool featurette, but not, if you're interested in that side of it, I'd say just go watch it. There's not a ton to discuss about that specifically, but it was kind of a nice behind the scenes thing that was very interesting.
Mm-hmm. It was neat watching the recording process and him describing it, and the different kinds of music in this game is just really awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And we know there's going to be radio stations you can listen to as you're driving around, so going to be lots of music. But let's talk quickly. Let's talk, or not so quickly, about life paths. By the way, so there's the Night City Wire stuff. Then we're going to get into the post Night City Wire stuff, where there's just so much more info. But right now we're just specifically talking about the specific Night City Wire stuff. Now, CD Projekt did a poll on Twitter, and at last I checked, they were the poll was about which life path are you going to choose for your first playthrough, and the 3, Street Kid, Nomad, and Corpo, were roughly split evenly, but. Mm-hmm. But last I checked, Street Kid was ahead by a small margin. So seems like Street Kid. For a while, everyone was just talking about Nomad. But then we saw more of the Street Kid life path at Night City Wire 2, and it really that seems to have resonated with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But Corpo too, it does seem roughly split. It seems split fairly evenly, which is really interesting. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something that CDPR should be proud of, that they've created three options for the life path, your character's history in the game, that all look sort of equally appealing, even though they're all so very different. So
yeah, I'm really excited for the replayability of this game, because depending on which path you go down, it affects the stories, and you have different options open each way, right?
Yeah. So I'll ask you two, which ones, after seeing the Night City Wire details, the new details about the life paths. Well, which one are you leaning toward for your first playthrough?
I'm still up in the air.
Yeah.
I still don't know.
Can you narrow it down to 2? Or is it just that difficult?
Street Kid and Corpo.
Yeah.
I'm still it's. I mean, everybody. I know most people are still like. I think you still want to do the. I think you still really want to do the Nomad one. So I'm kind of stuck between the two, and we'll kind of see where that ends up going.
Yeah, it's between Nomad and Street Kid for me.
Is it? So yeah, I'm torn between Nomad and Corpo now. The corporate one looks really interesting to me. Like how you it's kind of taking on the system from the inside. So I guess we'll have to I mean, there's 3 of us here, so we should each pick a different one and do some content. That'll be a lot of fun. Yeah. So there's lots of opinions coming in from the chat. Robin Green says Nomad, then Street Kid, then Corpo. There's a few others. The messages go by so fast now. MRM70 says Nomad, Corpo, and Street Kid in that order. Yeah. I don't know. I kind of want to and also it kind of feels like, do I want to play as a male character or female character for different life paths? Like, I think that could bring a different feel to it as well. I don't think it'll make a huge difference in terms of gameplay and story and what actually happens, but it can affect, the relationships you can have with different characters. And I don't know how invested I'm going to be in the romance or not. It depends how well they do it, but yeah, we'll have to see. But anyway, it definitely didn't make the choice any easier for me, seeing all that info. Creature Kobe says Nomad, Street Kid, then Corpo. Interesting. Cyber Cobra says Corpo, and is there a new game plus? I don't recall.
Yeah, I don't think so. In the traditional sense of what most people would think, I wouldn't put it past them for sure. But it's probably some. I mean, our favorite form of new game plus is new game plus mods. Am I right?
Yeah. Well, then you can basically do anything you want.
Mm-hmm. No, that's really what I think we're gonna see here on this one.
Dracula is considering a non-lethal Corpo run. That could be a really interesting thing to attempt.
That would be by far one of the more interesting routes and things that you could do.
I imagine that would be fairly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just goes to show, like, all of the different options. It's not just picking your life path. You can make those kinds of decisions. What type of character are you going to play? Are you going to go non-lethal? Are you going to be more of a solo? Are you going to be more of a stealth person or a hacker? Like, there's just the combinations. I think there's going to be some huge emergent game. Yeah, Dracula's just going to drain folks of their blood. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I can't wait to see what this has to offer in terms of all of the different combinations, all of the different possibilities. But anyway, yeah, so really cool featurette about all the life paths. You get to see snippets of Nomad life and Corporal life and Street Kid life. Some new characters introduced in all of those little featurettes. So it was really interesting. And then they showed us another feature called Tools of Destruction, where they went fairly deep into the weapons. So let me just bring up the info I need here. Okay, so there's 5 main categories of weapons according to the video they put out. You got your power weapons, which are basically they're like normal firearms that fire bullets, but they have ricochet abilities.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a normal weapon that fires a metal projectile, but they do have some extra stuff on top of them. Then you got your tech weapons, which are high-powered guns that can pierce surfaces and multiple targets. Yes, please. Smart weapons that have homing rounds, which follow targeted enemies, and they showed there's an 8-barreled shotgun where you can target a different enemy with each barrel.
Yeah, I wonder how much
That is so
that's
cool.
going to be auto-targeting, or how much that's going to be like, yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, well, I imagine you have to line up your targets first.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if it's what I'm picturing, if it's like the there was an upgrade in Dishonored 2 you could get for your crossbow, where you could target multiple enemies. You had to, like, hold down the button and run your cursor across each enemy you wanted to target, and then let it go, and it shoots them all. Don't ask me how it worked. Probably some sort of magical element to it because it was Dishonored, but in this case it'll be tech powered. Then of course you've got your melee weapons, your close range weapons that have been modified with specific perks, and your cybernetic upgrades that grant V special attacks and abilities. And we're going to go through a few of them here. I've got some screenshots, so if you're watching on YouTube, you can turn your attention to the screen right now, and we will go through some of the weapons that they showed us. So the Carnage is a pump-action shotgun that can fire ricochet rounds and can be modified to increase your magazine size. So if you're in a small area firing a shotgun, and it actually the shards and pellets actually like ricochet around the room, that could be pretty devastating. Shotguns, super cool. I wonder if there's a stealth shotgun option. And then we have
The stealth shotguns are, like, having played Fallout 4 so much, stealth shotguns are very, very, very broken. If you can actually get it working that way, it's like, it's very strong.
Yeah. All right, then we have, this is called the Tsunami Nekomata. The sniper rifle is a specialized tech weapon that can pierce targets and surfaces. And this is a cool aspect too. The piercing sniper rifle that can shoot through walls. I wonder what we were discussing. I was discussing with the chat during live stream. How are they going to keep these weapons from being seriously overpowered? Obviously, the enemies are going to have defenses. There must be a limit to how many walls you can pierce or something. Otherwise, it seems like you can clear a building before you even step inside.
Well, obviously you can't just shoot through the entire building like with like a rail gun. Obviously, they're going to have like some kind of limitation on it. In Mass Effect multiplayer, and in the single player game, they had a couple mods that could shoot through defenses, and there was each modification had like a certain amount. So the bullet would travel through. I think it was like distance that it could shoot through things, and it would get progressively more the more you could stack that one trait up on a weapon. And if you stacked it really, really high on a weapon, you could snipe people through walls and buildings and stuff like that. And it was actually a very, very strong build. So, yeah, that's probably going to be incredibly overpowered in most cases. So, yeah,
Right.
It's just the concept of being able to shrug off or ignore a concept like cover in a game that's kind of built around cover, or with at least the concept of cover. I mean, that's going to be truly, very, very strong.
True. Now, Cyberpunk's not going to be entirely cover based. I mean, there will be cover. There will also be destructible cover.
Mm-hmm.
But there will be other kinds of defenses too. Like your enemies are going to have cyberware. They're going to have armor. They're going to have like armor plating in their bodies and different things that can help them. They too might have the sniper rifle that can shoot through walls. So So it could be a really interesting, it could be a really interesting combination of. I feel like some of the tactics you're gonna have to use. We might have to develop some new tactics for defeating enemies, because we may have these super high powered weapons, and maybe they'll take down the low level mobs really quickly, but your like officer level mobs or your bosses, not so much. But they did say they've tried to avoid bullet sponginess. We'll get into that in another article that came out post Night City Wire. Ali Mahfouz has an interesting comment here, though. He says, unpopular opinion, I'd also like some bad guns in the game located in places where we run out of ammo and are forced to use those guns that make the gameplay a bit infuriating. I think, yeah, you like that, Moontag.
It's funny. This is like, of course I would get this one, and then if by some miracle you survive, you're like, well, that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we will see stuff like that. There's gonna be different gun manufacturers. There's gonna be different qualities of different things. So, yeah, this should be interesting. And I wonder like how ammo limits are gonna play into it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I found like in a lot of games you just never run out of ammo, never run out of money, and that always it can be a little immersion breaking. It's like, yes, I'm carrying 5,000 shotgun rounds and 5,000 minigun rounds and 5,000 10mm rounds. It's like, well, where are you keeping all that? I wonder how many weapons you can carry at once. I'm in favor of limits on those.
Well, and I mean that's kind of interesting. I do wonder if we're gonna like what kind of like we know we've gotten only peeks at the inventory system we have, and that was like from a few years ago. We have no idea where that inventory system is currently sitting.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So next weapon we're gonna look at here. We've got the TKI 20 Shingen, or Shingen. A submachine gun that has tracer rounds. With the targeting system activated, the smart weapon fires bullets that will home in on the enemies, even following them around corners. This weapon can be modified to fire non-lethal rounds. So, non-lethal rounds is another interesting aspect of this. So,
that's going to be it's going to be a big part of the game, because imagine having that eight barrel shotgun walk into a room and it's modified with non-lethal rounds. I don't know if that's something you can do, but I mean, beanbag shotguns have been around for a long time. I would be really shocked if you couldn't do beanbag shotguns. But just the ability to just like knock everybody out, tie them all up, and be like, "Hey guys, could have come in here and destroyed you all, but instead, we're playing nice. So give me the information I'm looking for, and we all go home with an extra, and I'll even leave you some credits." I could like that. That's an interesting concept behind the idea of like of playing these kinds of like games where you can have the morality system of like everybody knows that mercenary doesn't kill you, but he'll like he'll knock you out, and then he'll paint like clown faces on you or something like that, or and then just walk out with what he wants, and like that's really, to me, that's really funny. That's engaging gameplay that I can really really get behind. So yeah.
All right. Next, we've got the thermal katana from Arasaka.
Yes.
It's got a nanofilament heated blade. It has no add-ons, really. It's got this heated blade. So I'm guessing there's different options for blade types, things like that. It can be used for stealth, close range combat encounters. I imagine the glow of that thing would. I hope if you have a glowing weapon like that like affects your stealth.
I'm picturing something like Demon Slayer, where it's like after image, whoosh whoosh.
Yeah, well, I think that. I imagine like it'll look really cool when you're swinging it around for sure. But if you're sneaking around with this in your hand, I mean, obviously, I hope that they have the enemies smart enough that they're like, oh, there's like a glowing spot moving over there. I should go check it out. Rather than like, a lot of games where you can be squatting 3 feet in front of the guy holding a gigantic laser gun, but because you're slightly in shadow, they're like, oh, I don't see anything.
Yeah, stealth in video games is one of those things where it's like exactly like in the Skyrim type games, it's so overpowered, it's so broken, but at the same time, it's like, how do you like perfect that system? And this is where I'm kind of hoping that we'll see some yeah, I'm really interested in seeing exactly how stealth works in this game, and then other games like Baldur's Gate 3. Like we've already seen how that has started to affect things, and I'm really starting to dig that that concept. I'm really starting to enjoy that general like play style and format with that. So yeah, that's very interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. Our chat loves the heated katana.
What? There's no reason not to.
Right?
It's a sexy weapon.
It really
It
is.
is.
Nothing, no innuendos you can pull out of a heated blade that pierces. Moving on. Let's have a blade that springs out. The Mantis blades from Arasaka. So this is a cyberware upgrade. Close range cybernetic coming from Arasaka Corporation. This upgrade grants V large arm blades that can be used in stealth and combat encounters. Of course, we're all very familiar with these. We've seen them everywhere. They were on the Cyber Psycho in the very, very, very first Cyberpunk 2077 teaser from way back in 2013. Of course, the Cyber Psycho had this upgrade. So, the recent Night City Wire showed some finishers you could do with this. It seems like these would be really awkward to fight with, really. But I mean, I guess you'd learn.
I see them kind of like really long, sharp tonfas, but like on the tops of the hands instead of to the side.
Oh, yeah, I see. I think, if they popped out of the side of your arm, it seems like that would make more sense rather than... Because if you're slashing at a guy, or even,
It's like a roundhouse sweeping motion.
Yeah, rather than, as it's currently oriented, you're like swinging your arm down, which I think you'd really have to build up those muscles.
Or hey, you can just like punch forward, and then the arm just extend and just right down.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, still very cool. And there's again in the interview that we're going to get to in a bit here, he mentions that you basically have to go to the black market to get these.
Mm-hmm.
They're military grade cyberware, so it's not like you're not supposed to be able to get them at your average Ripper Doc. All right, let's move on here. So this is some cyberware, the Gorilla Arms. Now, it's been confirmed you can't have both Gorilla Arms and Mantis blades. It's the kind of thing you'll have to pick and choose, because it's like there's only so much space in that arm to have cyberware. So these give you increased strength and endurance. I imagine it allows for superior unarmed combat. So you want to just go in with your fists, you can do that. But you can dismantle turrets and use them. And I'm hoping for kind of a Deus Ex mechanic where if you have enough arm upgrades, that allows you to pick up and throw larger and larger things. I don't know if they're going to have that or not, though. I would hope so, but I just don't know if that's a mechanic they built into the game. Like, you could pick up a big... Like in Deus Ex, you could pick up, like... If you got strong enough, you could start picking up vending machines and things and just chucking them. Or moving them around to climb on to get to different areas.
Wait, do people not normally have that ability?
Most people cannot pick up a vending machine, no.
Oh, okay. Just Yeah. All right. Well, that
And I recommend you don't
that
try,
that
'cause
explains some things. Yeah.
those things can kill you if they fall on you. All right, and another one that they showed us was the projectile launch system, also an ARM-based cyberware. So, launch rockets from your arm, literally. So, very, very cool. Very cool to see some of these options that we have. So yeah, again, definitely recommend checking out their Tools of Destruction cinematic. We're gonna
Yeah,
talk.
it was definitely worth it.
We are gonna talk about. We're gonna talk more about weapons in a minute. Then we're also going to get into a Q&A. That was totally not a Q&A. That happened fairly shortly after Night City Wire. Because I'm a pathological liar. All right, but first.
So they stated very clearly, oh, this isn't a Q&A, but it devolved into this thing where, and I know this is a very, very difficult concept for some people to get, but it devolved into this thing where some people asked questions, and then the developers answered those questions.
Totally not a Q&A.
So whilst this is certainly not a Q&A, in the traditional sense of saying, hey, this is a Q&A, the fact that you had some questions that were then answered by some other people quickly developed into into this strange event where people asked questions and then had some of those questions answered.
Yeah. We'll explain
So
all this in a second. I just want to say I love seeing everybody so active in the live chat. You are listening to the Augmented Reality podcast. If you want to keep the conversation going after the live broadcast, I welcome you to join our Discord community. You can find the link in the description below. It's a place where you can chat with us, other Triple S community members, about all the things we love to talk about. Stay up to date about everything we're doing here at the Triple S League. You can request topics there. You can find people to game with. There's a bunch of folks there that are playing Quiplash on a regular basis, playing Sea of Thieves together, doing all kinds of different things. We can add more rooms as necessary. We've got an event going on right now called the Cyberpunk 2077 NPC game. Show us screenshots of your favorite NPCs and why you like them. And if you saw our video that we put out earlier this week, the tier list, the Cyberpunk 2077 romance tier list. If you haven't seen that, by the way, go check it out. We had a lot of fun putting that together. It involves a lot of contributions from our community, and we tried to make it really funny. And there's going to be more parts of that coming, at least one more, probably two, because I reopened it because the response to it was so good. There was just so much hilarious stuff that you guys are coming up with. So keep it coming. You can find that. You can find a channel dedicated to that on our server, but all kinds of other stuff there too. Join the Discord server. It's a fun place. Also, if you haven't yet, please do slam that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Do all of that stuff to tell YouTube that you appreciate this content. It really helps us out. All right. So, so very soon after Night City Wire happened, some of the devs, Miles Tost and Pavo Sasko, it was definitely the two of them. I can't remember if anyone else was there. I know Lalaya was there kind of mediating the entire thing. Mediating? Moderating? Moderating. So you had CD Projekt Red staff on their official Discord doing a hangout with some of their community members, which is really cool. Now, at the beginning, they were insistent, no, this is not a Q&A. No questions allowed, that kind of a thing. But it totally turned into a Q&A. I honestly don't know what they expected. Do you really expect some of your biggest fans to be talking to your devs and not ask questions? And if you're not supposed to ask questions, what do you talk about? That's my question. Tell them what you're excited for. I guess you could do that. Anyway, they didn't want it for whatever reason. They did not want it to be a Q&A, but it became a Q&A. And I gotta be careful what I say here. Some might call me a pathological liar for saying so. For whatever. I mean, you'll have to explain the logic to me there, but it totally became a Q&A. That's just how it happened. Anyway, our friend Annie, who runs the Netrunner 2077 website. Check it out, netrunner2077.net. It's an amazing website, super well designed. We were Annie HVX is he's a great guy. He's the guy who creates the 8K the AI based 8K upscales of a lot of cyberpunk material, trailers and stuff. He works his magic and upscales them to 8K, puts those on YouTube, and it's great. It's very impressive. He even, like, you remember that GIF of the car that CDPR posted on Twitter, and it looked really crappy. Like, he upscaled that and made it look really awesome. It's impressive what he can do. But he also has made this website called Netrunner 2077, and I recommend you all check it out. He's got articles, he's got interviews, he posts material from a lot of the cyberpunk content creators, ourselves included, but also like the Mad Queen and Last Known Meal and Neon Arcade and others. He transcribed the entire Q&A that took place at this hangout on Discord. So hats off to him for that. That's not a small amount of work to do that. So really appreciate that. So we're going to go through some of these questions. So it started off with the first half. Some of it's in Polish, and we don't have the translation yet, so we can't go through that part. But just trying to confirm who was answering questions first. This was Pavo Sasko, these questions here. So, one of the things he was asked was the Johnny Silverhand gameplay sequence a brain dance? We saw some info. We saw some gameplay involving Johnny Silverhand, including some stuff that looked like it was from Johnny Silverhand's perspective, like first-person perspective. He was asked, was that a brain dance? Pavo said, I can't currently comment on this. Players will have to find out. Of course. Not really a surprising answer, but still, it's like, come on. Give us info. They were asked, what was the song that played during the weapons overview section of Night City Wire? A lot of people were curious about that. He can't... Man, scrolling on this website is so cool. He's got all this parallax stuff going on. I've got it muted, but it's got like this background cyberpunky soundtrack. And normally I hate it when websites play sounds, but this one's well done, and it really fits the cyberpunk vibe. Sorry, totally off topic there, but... All right. There was some discussion about how well the combat looks compared to previous versions shown, especially the melee combat, and I would agree with that. It looks like they've put a lot of effort into making it look better, and especially what we saw of the katana gameplay. Now, the new katana gameplay we saw was a level, if I recall correctly, I know we saw some gameplay from a level 50 character, so they were showing us combat from further on in the game. So that might contribute to it too, because we know things change as you level up. Combat becomes better, smoother, you just get better at it, and that kind of a thing. So that might be a factor that played into how well it looked, and I think that was smart of them to do that, to show that even if it looks kind of stiff and clunky when you're a low-level character, it kind of makes sense, because as you do it more and more, you get better at it, and then the animations start to look smoother, you start to be more effective. That kind of thing. Okay. And Cyb and Moontech, chime in anytime you want. I'm just going to kind of power through these because there's so much to get to today. But chime in anytime you want. Another question, do the side quests offer the same amount of choices as the main story, or do they differentiate? And Pavel said, it all depends. We always start from the plot, so if it makes sense for the plot, it means it's there. If it doesn't make sense for the plot, it means there might be less choices depending on what it is. It all depends on what was introduced to the story, because we want to make sure it makes sense and feels good. Our core principle is always we want to give the player as many choices as possible, but at the same time stay reasonable, because we need to stay within our given budget, obviously. There's limits. They can't make full world simulator 2020. But they also want to just give options that feel natural to the player. He says, as an example, I should be able to do this. Basically, if they figured that the player would feel they should be able to do something, they try to make that possible, right? So there will be scenarios where you won't be given choices you prefer to make in order, from a design standpoint, to not destroy too much of that particular story or sway too much from the vision of choices given for that particular quest. But generally, there are plenty of options for side quests. We've put a lot of attention and detail into them, and we've talked about how they've put a lot into the side quests, because as you do side quests, that affects the main quest. It can affect options you have in the main quest. So the side quests are almost adjunct to the main quest. Like I feel like the line is blurred a lot more between side quest and main quest. There is still your central main quest, but your side quests are kind of interwoven with that still.
Well, and it's an interesting game design, which side quests can have, or do have, as much if not more of an impact on you as a player than somebody outside of that perspective. So yeah, it's a very interesting concept, and I mean I think it's a great way to expand it and kind of tie that into that. So it's an interesting thing, and I'm very curious to kind of see where that goes in the future, because we're so used to just games being games, right? Games having main quests, and your main quest is the source of the everything in the game. A game as a game, too. But when you have the game, you're obviously expecting the main quest to be the focal point of the game. In this game, I don't think that's the case. I mean, in the sense that I think it is the case, obviously, but it's not. It's not quite what some people have imagined it to be, and I think that is very, very, very interesting. So yeah.
Well, and he elaborates on this a little more in a later question. He says, he gets asked about the statement of, like, is it possible to finish the game without you don't have to finish the main quest to finish the game, basically.
Yeah.
And he says it's difficult to clarify without the internet going crazy. He says it depends on the definition you're using for what is the side quest and what is the main quest. That's the whole problem. When you decide to do side content, it opens up new paths that allow you to finish the game in more ways that were previously closed to you. So I see it as, like, you do a side quest and you help somebody with a problem, then that person might be available later to help you out with the main quest. Maybe they can hack something for you, or give you, they might just be available to help you.
Yeah.
So he was asked, when it comes to character relationships, will you be able to see them outside of quests? In other words, can you interact with them outside of quests, or do you have to proceed to talk to them during quests? He says, it's a romance question. If I say something, it'll be a headline. I'm sorry, you'll have to play the game to find out.
That's brilliant.
He's very aware of the fact that anything he says is going to be taken and blasted across every website ever. Let's see. Who is Takemura? He says he has no idea.
Of course he has no idea. And again, this is where I just need to point this out, guys. They lie. They don't lie because they want to lie. They lie because they have to lie. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah.
And Yeah, that's just the way the cookie crumbles.
Let's see. So I'm skipping a bunch of questions. You can check out these transcriptions on netrunner2077.net.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. I'm skipping some just to try and answer the most relevant ones because there's some fluff questions. But okay, one thing he's asked during the guns and modifications section, there was a scene where V is fixing his pistol. He's in third-person perspective. Is that just a thing you guys did for the episode, or is that an example of third-person cutscene? Pavo says it's actually in the game. It's called the first equip. Basically a cool animation you get for a new item you've obtained. It was just cut like that for the trailer, but yes, it's in the actual game. So yes, third-person cutscenes. Not all third-person cutscenes. I want to make sure that's clear. A lot of them are going to be first-person. But, and like, it's hard. Some of them, like, it won't even feel like a cutscene. It's just like part of the game. It's just the stuff happening around you, and you can freely move around. Although you might be restricted to, standing in a particular spot or whatever. But anyway, there's going to be a mix of first-person and third-person cutscenes. That's the point there. How many options do we have when it comes to obtaining clothes in the game? Do we buy them from shops, or can we find them on the ground? Pavo says both. You can find them as lootable items. You can also buy them as well. Your typical RPG options are covered. So that's the fun. There's other questions I didn't read there, but that's the Pavo Sasko questions. I'm going to move on to the Miles Tossed questions, where he says, so Pavo Sasko, by the way, he's a quest designer. Miles Tossed is a level designer. So just to give you some context about how the perspectives they're coming from when answering these questions. Miles is asked, is the blocking of non-accessible buildings or doors contextual? Is there a reason why they're blocked, and as to why we can't physically enter a particular building or door in the game? And Miles says, yes, we try. Not everywhere. We can't put a bouncer in front of every door in the world, but in areas where we feel it's super obvious, like if there's an area in the main quest with a door you can't enter, in that context, we'll try to put something extra there. But the amount of doors we have in Cyberpunk will completely dwarf the amount of doors we have in The Witcher 3. At one point in The Witcher 3's development, I counted the doors. He counted that there were about 2,500 doors in the game, and it's going to be way more for Cyberpunk. So to come up with a logical reason why you can't, I mean, I think in a lot of cases it's just, well, the door's locked. You can't walk into some rando's apartment, right? But where it's like say the entrance to a building or something. Sounds like they try to make it, some sort of logical reason why you can't enter that door. Some other questions about... So there's a bunch of questions about level design, which I would, if you're curious about that aspect of things, I mean, you can go and read this interview too, but we did an interview with Miles Tossed. You can find it on this channel. Posted it a couple weeks ago. Interview with Miles Toss that we did on the Cyberpunk 2077 community podcast. You can find that right here on this channel. It was very interesting back and forth we did with him. So he is asked, what's the one thing you're most proud of that has had a lot of public reception? He says anything really. I mean, it's like putting it out for the world to see is basically really nerve-wracking, and so they're just happy that people like it, basically.
Yeah, no, that is super concerning, right? Because I mean, it's always going to be worrisome putting your game out there, trying to have people see what they think about it, see what they like about it, what they don't like about it, all that kind of stuff. It can be, of course, it's going to be very frustrating and demanding. So I really do hope that they don't panic too much about it, and they don't let people get to them. It's interesting. I was listening to a podcast the other day with David Tennant, and he was talking about how, you know, you'll have 1,000 positive reviews in a paper about a show or about a thing, but then there's one very sour review, and that's the one you spend all day thinking about. And I hope the devs don't fall into that trap, because it very much is a trap. It is very much a an extremely unhealthy line of thinking, and it can of course cause so many issues to people and their you know, kind of like what they feel on it. And yeah, that sucks when you're fed that constantly as a diet. So yeah.
Yeah. And that's for anyone who's involved in content creation, same deal.
Mm-hmm.
When we first started, every dislike on a video bugged me. Now it's like background noise, because you realize, you know, a critic might be like, they might be having indigestion from the burrito they ate last night and are in a sour mood, and give your show a bad review for that. Like, yeah, there's a time and a place for appropriate feedback that you should you know, learn from and take forward, because of course we can always learn and grow. But yeah, you should not pay attention to every negative thing everybody says, because some people are just dicks and trolls, and just, you know, especially on the internet, some people are just out to try and ruin your day. That's what I have discovered. All right, so how many power weapons are there? Well, Miles says, I don't know. And I mean, that's not his department. So it's no surprise he doesn't have an answer. But he says there's a ton. But I think people tend to forget that this is an RPG first and foremost. So customization and equipment choices, making choices in skills, talents, how your character looks, how you choose dialogue, that is the center stage of this experience. So reiterating that it's an RPG first, not a shooter first. And that's something we're going to get into with the next article that we're going to go into as soon as we're done with this totally not a Q&A. Then he gets asked, what's that?
It's an inquiry.
An inquiry, yes. No one expects the Discord Inquisition. Speaking of customization, how far can you customize your junk? And Miles says, I feel like this is an ideal moment for me to eject. Given that I said 15 minutes and we are far past that. And then he says he's proud. He's proud of the community that it took so long to get to that question. And then somebody says, we've been doing a thing in our server for a while. This is one of the community. So they were talking to some of the community members on the official Cyberpunk Discord. I don't know who it was. Like, I don't know if it's like the mods or the, you know, I'm not sure exactly how they decided who were part of this voice chat. But, you know, it was obviously some of the important members of the community there. And they said, one of them said, we've been doing a thing in our server for a while where we try to go 24 hours without talking about genitals. We've never made it. Ladies and gentlemen, the internet.
This is, honestly, it's great. It's great. It's great. Because at least we have the ability to talk about, you know, that stuff versus, like, you know, being forced not to. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the reasons why I love CDPR and why CDPR is honestly the greatest, because they don't try to control us, and that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I appreciate, and I cannot iterate how much I appreciate that from this company. Yeah. And I think we all really appreciate them for that, because you know, I want to talk about this kind of stuff, and I want to hear what other people are talking about this kind of stuff about. Not all the time, but, you know, whenever. And I think that that's a good thing.
You heard it here. Cyb likes to talk about his junk. Blissful Soul says, I've never customized my character's junk before. The only game I'm aware of that has that ability is Conan Exiles. And yeah.
Well, sir, you just don't play a lot of games. Clearly,
The only mainstream game that I'm aware of where you can do that.
Oh, mainstream. Yes, of course.
The only big budget AAA game I'm aware of where you can do that. And someone wrote a song about it. It's very funny. But yeah, I don't know if you're gonna have a full slider like you have in that game, but yeah, there's options apparently. All right, and we looked at that already. So all right, we're running a little low on time here, but we have this interview with so VG247 interviewed Paavo Kapala. He's a senior. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. Kapala, maybe? Paavo Kapala. Senior gameplay designer who also worked on The Witcher 3. And he's a veteran at the studio there. And he talked about weapons. And I'm just going to highlight some of the biggest, some of the most important things he said, especially when it comes to balancing weapons with RPG mechanics. Because I think that's very interesting, and that's something that we should be aware of going into this. Is it is an RPG first, and I think it's going to have pretty decent shooting mechanics. Might not be top of the line, but it's going to be again, it is an RPG first. And this interview was with VG247, not a website I'm a huge fan of, but they're the people with the info in this case, and they've just put out a transcript here. Like they literally just transcribed the interview. So I think, the info is going to be good, of course. So the first question was, let's start at the top because this is really different to The Witcher. When you were first approaching the game, were there any particular inspirations in terms of gun feel and handling? And Paavo Kapala says, we definitely looked around, we shopped around, we saw nearly every game that came out in the last couple of years. The biggest problem that we encountered was that for most of the games that we played, they were shooters with RPG elements. And that's not what CDPR was aiming for, he says. We're going from the opposite side. First of all, we're an RPG, and we're adding shooter elements on top of that. Most of the games that we encountered had a great feeling of shooting, things like effects, visual effects, sound effects, animations, all of that, and we were actually inspired by a couple of major titles there. However, like I said, the problem is that you have to implement those RPG systems into the shooting mechanics, and what that means is that suddenly most of the games that we were looking at basically disintegrate, because you need to scale things that those games do not scale. Stuff like recoil isn't a static variable anymore. The movement of the camera, the amount of spread the weapons have, the charge time, reload time, all of those things suddenly need to be scalable and throughout the entire experience. So we definitely looked at other games when it comes to visual feedback for the player and what feels good as you're pulling the trigger, so to speak. However, most of our work was spent on developing and creating the RPG systems so that the player can see that as the game progresses, the player character basically becomes better and better in using those weapons. So that was a mouthful. But I felt it was good to give you the entire context there, because he's really explaining what their focus was with the weapon systems. I mean, there was there's a lot of stuff to balance there. There's a lot of stuff to kind of have your character get progressively better and better at as you go through the game. And and have it be affected by where you invest your skill points and things like that, but also just as you use particular, and he gets into this later, as you use particular weapons, you get better with that class of weapon.
And Moon, you were quite excited with this proposal, right? Because this is something it's not in very many games, this scaling system. I really enjoyed this in APB Reloaded, in the original APB. just because you could do so much stuff, really cool stuff. You could just like if you got really good at like some of the weapons that I remember early on, everybody was SMG. Everybody and their dog was SMG, and I rolled heavy machine gun, and I could eventually get it where I got so good at it, I ranked it up so much that I could take out a car before they could like usually run me over, because there was a lot of like that was one of the more common ways to kill somebody, was to just like run them over with the car. And but when I loaded up this weapon and I just like completely disintegrated the vehicle even before it got halfway to me, suddenly that was a change, because the meta was get in the car, use the car to like drive into an opponent, hop out of the car, and then SNG them down. Or if you missed somebody with the car, then you SNG them down. And that was the meta. And the machine gun play countered that meta hard, because you would see them coming and you just crouch down in the middle of the street and just go boom, 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 boom. And just before the vehicle hit you, it exploded, flew over your head. 3 guys come out of it dying, and it's just like, and then they're really upset because the meta is all about SMG, and it's just really really fun to like have that kind of to do that kind of thing. Yeah, it's fun to screw with the meta. It's fun to take this system and to turn it on its head. And it's probably one of the things that I enjoy doing the most is taking metas and turning them upending them, so to speak. Because yeah, that is a fun thing to do, and I've always had an enormous amount of fun in doing something like that. So.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
And I wonder if, like, as you level up proficiency, like, have like things into um, like more options packs. Okay, is that better?
Yes, way better, way better.
Okay, no, I was just saying, it's going to be really cool to see like how you can level up with your proficiency, and if like as you do level up, if like more options be open to you, like for fighting and whatnot.
Well, I absolutely think there will be.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I don't know if it's going to lock you out of. I mean, proficiency. I wonder if proficiency is going to lock you out of certain weapons or certain like upgraded versions of those weapons, like in some RPGs. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that aspect. But we do know that there's definitely you get better as you do particular things in the game. You get better at those skills and better at those weapons. And I really like that, because that just kind of automatically shapes and molds your character, right? As opposed to having to try and pick the right skills at the beginning that you want to put your points into. That's one thing where, yeah, like video games can do it differently than tabletop RPGs. Okay. So another question that Pavel Capella answered was, a big thing in pure shooters is that the world tends to be more reactive to bullets, whether that's the enemies or shooting out lights, the world itself, etc. RPGs tend to scale back on that. So how reactive is your world? Is it more reactive than your average shooter RPG? And Kapala says, absolutely. We put a lot of emphasis on having destructible environments overall in our game. Players will experience things ranging from very simple, like there's simple things like, for example, if you're shooting around a bar, you'll see glasses exploding, things like that, and there will be bullet impact holes all over everything. So it's not going to be a case where it's like you shoot a wine glass on the table and the bullet hole decal appears on the wine glass. Like, that's the invincible wine glass. You should be using that as a weapon.
Right.
But no, like the stuff in the environment is going to react to bullets hitting it and stuff like that. But also they're going to have destructible cover and things like that. So he goes on to say, we want players to actually use some of the weapons to destroy cover so that enemies are at a disadvantage. We have destructible glass. All of those things give you the feeling that the projectiles from your weapons actually carry power with them. And this also extends to stuff like you will see the bullet decals on most things. All of the things in the level, you will see different hit reactions. For example, if you hit a pipe that has water in it, you will see water spouting from the place you hit. And this extends to nearly every object in the game. So that's really cool. I like that a lot. There's a couple questions about character death animations. I'm just going to skip that for time. But in the Night City Wire interview, they talked a little bit about legendary weapons that are attached to specific quests. Can you talk a little bit about how that works? And Kapala says, we need to remember that it's not like you finish a quest and you get a reward. We don't want to have that artificial type of game loop necessarily. It's more of a situation where you helped a certain NPC, like let's say you helped Meredith Stout. If you help her and then you continue your relationship with her, you can get a certain legendary weapon from her because she rewards you as a character. It's not necessarily that the legendary weapon falls out of the sky, right? It's so they make it very organic how you come across these things. He goes on quite a bit more in response to that question. I'm just going to skip over that for the time being. If you get VG247 asks, if you get one of these, you would assume that an earlier mid-game legendary weapon would be outclassed by the late game. Is that the case, or can you upgrade the weapons as well as get new ones? Kapala said you can upgrade certain weapons. You can upgrade weapons by using modifications on them, so you can bring them up to a certain level. However, we have so many weapons that we don't want the player to spend their entire game using only one. And what you also know is that some legendaries will have, I wouldn't say drawbacks, but will behave in a certain way. And we expect players to pick and choose their favorite guns, and some of those will not fit your playstyle. And we're completely okay with that, because again, we're making an RPG. So some weapons will fit a stealthy character, some weapons will fit a solo, etc., etc. So it's a pick and choose situation. So so basically you can upgrade weapons, you can increase their level, but they try to make it appealing to use a variety at the same time.
And this is one of the things that when I read this I was a little disappointed with. I personally prefer having a weapon that is my kind of like go-to favorite weapon. I don't know how much of that is going to remain, and because the way that they kind of phrased it was a little interesting, was a little wonky. I very much do prefer having my thing, having the thing that I like the way that I like it. So yeah, that's something that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because at the end of the day, I always prefer to have my setup and my thing the way that I want that thing to work out.
Right.
And that's just typically how that works. So yeah, it's
I mean,
going
it
to be
sounds
interesting.
like
It's
if you
gonna be
have
really
a
interesting to see how that works.
I mean, it sounds to me like if you have a go-to thing, if you have a favorite weapon, you can carry that along with you. You might use other stuff in addition, but you might have your favorite weapon and give a name to it. I don't know if you can name them in the game or not. Some games you can do that, but in your head you can just be like, oh, this is my favorite sniper rifle. His name is Sparky, and you just upgrade him as you go along until so he's always at the same level as you. Personifying guns, always fun. Okay, Let's see here. I'm skip for just because there's too much info to go through here, and we are running low on time. But there's a couple of other important things I wanted to address. On the topic of melee, where are you at with the melee The questioner asks, this sort of first-person combat is really hard to get right. We've seen Bethesda struggle with it. Honestly, didn't feel there in your preview build. So where are you guys with melee, with swords, fists, and stuff like that? And Kapala says we're still a couple of months before release. I'm actually right now working on melee. We're spending a lot of time trying to perfect that, and basically we're not 100% happy with it, mostly with the visual feedback. So we're still working on it.
Yeah. Again, this is where, I mean, I'm not trouncing on them. I don't want to do that, but this really just boils down to the fact that this is just not the third person concept of melee combat is where it excels. You just don't have the same feedback. You just don't. And it's really frustrating to constantly get this feedback of like, hey guys, this is a huge massive problem. We should probably do something about it. And yeah. I don't want to.
Well, I mean, it changes
harp on
it
it too
changes
much.
it significantly, but at the same time, like,
Yeah. And again, it's not their fault. It's just that's just the way the first person melee combat is. There's very, very few games that have managed to do a decent first person melee combat. There's fewer still that have actually managed to have actually legitimately managed to create something that's good. I mean, I can barely think of any. I think Dishonored maybe was like okay, but still like not as good as it could be. And it's just a system where it's not their fault. It's just on average you don't have that.
I mean, I agree it's harder, but I was happy with, like, in some ways I think you get more feedback in the first person, or you have a more. This is one area where I think immersion, good or bad, is served better by first person, is in the melee, because your field of view is limited. Nobody can actually see 360 degrees, in every direction. Now, granted, you can turn your head in real life and kind of get, you can see stuff, somebody approaching in your peripheral vision, maybe. It's really hard to emulate that in a video game. But in third person, you can see completely 360 around yourself, and so someone sneaking up behind you, well, you can see them, and you just turn around and whatever. It's a difficult thing to balance, and I honestly don't think it's good or bad either way. I think it comes down to preference. It is hard to get first person melee combat right, but there are games who have done it, and Dishonored, the combat was predominantly melee, and I think they did it very well. Some games it feels more like an afterthought, and it's not great. But you do, like, I think one of the biggest things is you want your weapon to actually connect with stuff in the world, rather than just feeling like it's a two-dimensional graphic pasted onto your face, right? Which in some cases it is. And which is why, so some games you can be like mashing your face against the wall, but you can still thrust your sword out in front of you, and it does nothing. It's not actually there in the world. It doesn't connect with the wall. So if they can avoid that kind of a thing, that definitely helps a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, me personally, again, I'm not ragging on them. I just think that, and I would hope that most people just at this point don't hope for a groundbreaking 10 out of 10 melee combat experience, because you're not going to get it.
All right, and okay, this is the last one we'll go through here. So he was asked some questions about the bullet sponginess of enemies. So the question was, how do you avoid those bullet spongy enemies where encounters seem to drag on and you're shooting someone over and over and over and over again? But he's just standing there taking bullets. And so Capella says, in the core of the game, if we're talking about the normal NPCs that you meet on the street, they can have different rarities to them. I would say most of the NPCs that you meet are just normal, just goons, and if you're continuing to level up, and if you're on the level of the enemy, you should never experience bullet sponginess. They're quite fast to engage and take down. However, they're quite deadly as well, so you need to use cover, you need to move around a lot, because you're going to take you're going to take significant damage from them, as well as dealing significant damage. But some of the NPCs will be more armored. Like, say they're at the officer level, they're more elite enemies that deal even more damage. They will take a bit more punishment. However, what we opted to do there is that we basically ensure that the hit reactions on our NPCs are always played. This is a big problem in most of the games that I played that have bullet sponges. Basically, you don't see any type of reaction on the NPCs. You're hitting them. It feels like you're literally shooting a sponge, like there's nothing there. And we never want to have that. So we will still play hit reactions on those NPCs. You will see that they're getting hit. They'll stumble. They'll fall from your gunfire, etc., etc., etc. I think that's fantastic. Because, yeah, bullet sponginess is hugely immersion breaking. When you have a dude, like, you have characters in this game that are going to have, like, titanium skulls and cyberware that protects them from attacks. So yeah, a headshot's not necessarily a one-hit kill. But for them to not react at all, like, just the force of the bullet should have some kind of impact, some kind of effect on their movement. It's just physics. And so it sounds like they're going to implement that kind of a thing. There's going to be hit reactions, stuff like that. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Any thoughts on that from you two before we wrap up here?
No, I mean yeah, no, it is what it is. The melee combat is going to take a while. It's going to take a while for it to, if it ever manages to get really, really good. But yeah, I'm confident that maybe some modders will get in there and improve it eventually. But it's not going to be as good as it's not going to be the top 10 melee combat game in history. It's just not.
Well, I doubt it would be. But I mean, what's a game you would point to that's like has really good melee combat in your opinion that most of us would be familiar with?
Well, Jedi Knight Academy had probably the best melee combat system ever devised. And it wasn't. I mean, this isn't a top tier game, and that's the thing. This game was literally like kind of a piecemeal thing with a very small studio, and they managed to come up with a combat system that was truly next gen. In its concept, stuff that you still don't even see today, which is shocking. The fact that it was such a good system and such a well done system, and yet for some reason it's still not recognized or utilized in the sense that you could. I mean, if you want like fluid, really fluid, really like tight combat with games and an experience that is like highly rated and like played at a professional level, then I mean you're going to be looking at you're most likely going to be looking at like some of the side scrolling combat type things. Well, not side scrolling. Like the Mortal Kombat stuff like that. Actually, no, Mortal Kombat's a terrible example because it's still side scrolling. What's the one I'm thinking of? Soul Calibur. Soul Calibur is 3-dimensional now, completely 3-dimensional arena. That's probably like, because again, that's played like, isn't Tekken also 3-dimensional now? I might be, yeah, I'm not sure. But those are probably the best types of games to point at as far as like from a professional level, from an enjoyment level. You've got things like Zelda, the most recent Zelda. That's a great melee combat system, probably one of the best. You got Skyrim is, despite its jankiness, That's incredibly. It has, again, it's not high skill level, but it's fun because people have been playing it literally forever. So I mean, you play it on your dang phone or fridge now. So it's one of those things where it would be as popular as it is right now if it wasn't fun, right? And so that's that fun factor that we're looking for. And I honestly don't know if we're going to have that high level fun factor in games that are force a particular perception, because the fun factor is up to the eye of the beholder, really, and you're not going to have as much of that in other games as you will in other games. So
Well, again, and I think with the emphasis on this being an RPG first, yes, they're building the melee system on top of that. But yeah, it's until we have
and
full.
again, I'm not trying to be negative to the company. They are clearly working on a concept and an idea that is very, very passionate to them, and I 100% agree with their desire to have this as the new, as the new going forward, right? This is clearly what they want. This is clearly where they're trying to, the direction that they're trying to go into, and that's cool. That is absolutely cool. So, yeah, it's that that's how I see it, and it makes total sense.
And with that, we'll wrap up the show for today. So thank you so much, everybody. Whoops, sorry. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening and for being part of this conversation today. Sorry we couldn't get to as many of your comments in the chat as we'd like. We just had so much information to get to today, but it looks like you guys were having a fun conversation. That's always great to see. Join the Discord server for more of that. Thank you for supporting the show by listening live or after the fact, and please don't forget to slam that like button before you leave. It really helps us. We really appreciate that. I want to thank our big damn heroes on Patreon: Robin, Shua82, Time Bean, Schoolaman, Lady Reaver, and our 2 anonymous supporters at the big damn hero level. We have some other supporters at the other tiers as well. Thank you. Also, our channel members on YouTube: Mr. Pazdernick, Jer Schultz, Game Notes, Night City Punk, Terror K, Somnolence, and _ Let On. And if you're listening after the fact on one of the audio-only platforms, we appreciate your interactions there as well. Don't forget you can join the live show on YouTube Wednesdays and Saturdays, where you can interact with us and other listeners and be a part of the discussion. There's a bit of a delay in getting the podcast up to the audio platforms, depending on how much else is going on with us. It varies wildly, but we try to get them up as quickly as we can. But you want the latest info sooner. Yeah, that's all on YouTube, and tons of other content there as well. So definitely see the Discord server for exact times and schedules of the podcast. And this podcast is a presentation of the Triple S League. Check out our YouTube channel for game guides, reviews, comedy, news updates, and tons more quality gaming content. My name is Ash on behalf of Cyb and Moontag. Thank you all so much for listening, and we'll talk to you again very soon.